All right. Okay. Hello, my good brothers and good sisters. Welcome to the show. As usual, I'm your host, your sister, and your friend, Nkiru, and you're tuned in to Conversations from the Diaspora, a Building Africa's Future podcast, where we share stories about culture, identity, and the connection across the diaspora. Whether you're a longtime listener or this is your first time joining us, I'm so glad to have you here. Please be sure to follow us on our Instagram and our Facebook at Building Africa's Future. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, BAF, Conversations from the Diaspora. And if you're watching this video, you'll see a QR code pop up from time to time on the screen. That's your one stop shop to support the show, from buying our merchandise, leaving us a voice message, or finding ways to connect with us and listen to us on your favorite platform, or even become a guest. And once again, you can find everything on our link tree on Instagram or in the show notes. Now, let's get into today's conversation. I have the wonderful privilege and honor to be joined today by Udochi Okeke. She is the founder of Mmuta Di Uto and Ikenga Nation. She is an innovative cultural creator who is using animation, music, and storytelling to preserve and promote the Igbo language in ways that are both educational and engaging, from puppet shows to folktale films and viral children's songs such as Egu Akuko Ahu. Her work is a beautiful fusion rather of tradition and technology. Udochi's commitment to cultural preservation, especially for a younger generation, is both inspiring and necessary. And I'm truly looking forward to exploring her journey and the vision behind her work. So, Udochi, please, if you could please say hello to our listeners.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here.
Yes, most definitely. So just to kind of give everyone a little bit of context, I think around the time that maybe my baby was like maybe a month or so, I had reached out to your team because obviously at that time, I think that's when you all first released. Well, I think at that time we were listening to some of the older content that you had, like the Abichi, Igbo, and some other things that was really catchy. I really enjoyed it. I played it all day long just for my baby to kind of get that, start hearing it early. And then shortly after you released, the Igbo body part song, Egu Akuku Aho song. And, obviously that one went viral. So of course I wanted to have you on on the platform just to kind of hear from you and get some more like insight into, the creation of everything and why, and the timing. And so I'm just so excited, just to have you here. And I think I've probably told you before, whenever my baby is having like his moments when he's crying or fussy, I instantly put put anything from your channel really, and then he almost always calms down. He's happy, bobbing his head, and now he's heading into 11 months. So he's it's been a big part of his life and our lives for almost 11 months. So I just want to thank you and your team first before we get started with everything else.
Oh, you're so welcome. That's so good to hear.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Well, Dochi, so just kind of give some more context about the podcast. For those who are familiar with our work, a big part of or a central theme of this podcast is kind of talking about our cultural upbringing and how that relates to why or how we do the things we do today. And so as it relates to childhood, culture, identity, I know for many parents in the diaspora, speaking specifically, for us as Nigerians, sometimes they threaten their kids, to send them back home, which, for me, I've always thought that was a bad thing. Like, you don't want to make your kids feel that, going back to their homeland is a bad thing. But for those who do, send their kids home, usually it's for like one or two reasons. Either maybe they're concerned about maybe some behavioral things, or they want their kids to have like a level of grounding or connection to their culture. So I know you were raised in DC, and you were sent back to Nigeria at the age of 13 to go to boarding school. And obviously that's a very big shift at any age, but especially in those early formative years. So how did that experience shape your connection to culture and ultimately plant the seeds for what would later become Mmuta Di Uto?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. And also when I was sent to Nigeria with my siblings for boarding school, it wasn't really posed as a threat or or like for a bad thing or anything like that. We weren't told that, oh, you're gonna go on punishment or anything like that. It was just like, I know there are people whose parents do that, But for us, it was just one of those things. It was like a coming of age thing for us. Like it
Mm.
was something where it's like once you get to high school, you're going to Nigeria. And there were six. I had six siblings, five siblings.
Wow.
I was one of six, and and we all went through passed through that rite of passage essentially, which was you get to high school age around ninth grade, and then you go to, well, one of my siblings went when he was in seventh grade, but you get to the right age, and then you're gonna go spend some time in Nigeria, and then you come back. And for me, it was very formative. It was one of those things where it I had never I had been to Nigeria before when I was like 3 years old, but
Hmm.
I didn't really remember that experience. And I think I stayed for like a year when I was 3 years old, but I
Okay.
didn't remember hardly anything from that experience. But I did learn, and even before that, I learned some Igbo words, like the how to count in Igbo, how to say my alphabet in Igbo. I
Right.
learned that in DC because my parents and a group of Igbo people in the community started giving classes to their children because they wanted to teach us Igbo. But there's a lot of people who believe a lot of weird things, like that if you teaching your children to be bilingual will confuse them. But that's
Right.
not true at all, because there are a lot of bilingual children who also speak English, and they are able to speak, both their native language and the English language, or their native language and some other language, and they're still able to be fluent in both. So it shouldn't be a problem, and it shouldn't be looked at as a problem. So one of the things that I experienced when I was in boarding school was being around Igbo people speaking Igbo and living in Igbo fluently for the first time. And because I didn't have the blessing of being able to be bilingual and speak fluent Igbo when I got there, there was a lot of things that I experienced that kind of made me an outcast, kind of made me feel
Mm.
like an outsider. And, I didn't realize the significance of that until actually when I came back from boarding school and went to school in New York. And when I went to
Okay.
school in New York, I was surrounded by a lot of people who were from different countries, like Asia, China, you know, Bosnia and Eastern Europe, Egypt and Northern Africa, and different countries like that, Nepal and all kinds of places. And when I was around surrounded by those people, what I realized was that everybody has their own culture, had their own culture, because I was living on the international floor. So a lot of these people had just come from their country for the first time, and
Mm.
they still practiced whatever culture that they practiced when they were in their country. I remember there was this one guy from Thailand who took his mattress off the bunk of that we
Hmm.
slept on in our college dorms and put it on the floor. And I don't even think he slept on the mattress. I think he slept on the floor itself,
Yeah.
because in
Wow.
Thailand it was just more comfortable for him. So he just slept
Right.
on the floor. And he was a straight A student. It was like he was one of those people that everybody looked up to. So it was
Hmm.
very interesting to see that. And then seeing other people from Asian countries and stuff like that still practicing things that they believed in and that they practiced back home was very beautiful to me. But it was also like, there's what do I know about my culture that I can still hold on to? Like, what is it about Igbo culture that is like worthwhile? And
Hmm.
when I saw Igbo culture in its fullness when I was in Nigeria, and coming back to America and kind of almost discarding my culture to take on this Hollywood culture, because I don't really know if I'll call it American culture. I call it Hollywood culture because it's when we're all acting like the people we see on TV, and we're thinking that that's the culture,
Hmm.
that which is actually just people advertising to you if you really think about it. But what is it about my culture that I can actually behave, that I can actually embrace? And the people that were going to school with me in Rochester, New York, the other people from other cultures, they would often tell me that I wasn't really Nigerian because I didn't speak my language. Um, you know, I didn't know how to cook a lot of the foods that
Hmm.
that were cooked in my culture. I did. There was a lot of things that I just kind of didn't have. So
Mm,
that really bothered me, because up until then I felt like I was a very proud Igbo person. I really believed that I was a very proud Igbo person, but it's like, what is the pride without the knowledge of where you come from?
mm,
And so that's what really informed my pursuit of creating content that would resonate with um, modern children, and
mm,
give them um, the tools to embrace their Igbo culture wherever they are.
mm. Wow, that's deeply powerful, and I definitely can relate to what you said as far as like, of course, because we were raised here, born here, or wherever the case may be. So naturally, there we won't be as deeply maybe connected to our culture as maybe those who are born back home, because we're not going to see our culture in real time unless we actively watch TV, watch videos in our language, or just other ways of embracing the culture. But still, it's not exactly the same as going outside and hearing people speak your language, or seeing weddings or different cultural and traditional elements. So definitely that feeling of like being out of place, even though you went back home at different points, and maybe still felt out of place, like that kind of typical immigrant feeling of, okay, I'm out of place in my homeland. I'm also still out of place in my new country. It's pretty it's
Absolutely.
pretty difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's absolutely right. Like it's
Yeah.
you're out of I felt like I was out of place in America, but I also was out of place in Nigeria. So it was like, where do I belong?
Yes.
So this is kind of me making my mark, saying, no, I'm planting. I'm Igbo, and I will,
Exactly.
I'm embracing it, and I'm contributing to it, and yeah.
Exactly. No, I love it. I love it, Udochi. Thank you. So I know, just kind of some the feed what you filled out. You mentioned that your dad played a big role in your love for the culture. So what were some of the values or stories that he passed on that still shape how you kind of move in the world today as a creator and as a culture bearer?
It's my father was a huge impact, had a huge impact on my life, and one thing that I will never forget about him is that, first of all, he was very funny. And people always say, Nigerian men are the funniest, people on earth, essentially.
Right.
But he truly was, like, he was a very big personality, and he always
Mm,
had jokes. I remember when I went when I went to college my sophomore year. He said, he told me a joke, and sadly that was the year he passed. But he told me this
mm.
joke before I went off to college. He was like, "Do you know why they call it sophomore?" And I was like, "No, why?" And he was like, "Because you suffer more."
Oh gosh, African dad jokes are the best.
It is dad jokes, and so he was just a very funny guy, and you know, he told us stories about just you know, he was known for somebody who would gather people around and tell them
Mm,
stories about, like, tell them stories to, like, help them with their um to help them grow up and be formative, and, like, grow, be mature and do things the smart way. So he was somebody
right.
who he was the one that taught me how to read. I learned to read on his lap at the age of 3. He everything, anything that I needed, to the point where when I was going to college, he helped me with applying to college and stuff like that. So
Mm,
he was very um very he played a very big role. He was very hands-on kind of dad who played a very big role in shaping me. And from going to Igbo events,
exactly.
going to the parties that they have, the weddings, the all kinds of events that Igbo people generally have, meetings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
He always had those. He always took us to attend those,
All right.
and I remember when he got his chieftaincy title, he he even lined up me and my brothers and sisters and told us, I know that here in America they treat you they treat you like you're just second class citizens or black or all
Yeah.
these things. but you are the daughter of a chief. You know,
Exactly.
he is very, he's very like just this big character who never wanted us to
Yeah.
be feel any less than or feel like, we grew up in DC, and
Mhm.
it was a place where, there were a lot at the time. It was a lot of gang activity. There was a lot of violence and stuff like that going on in the city at that time. It was even considered the murder capital of the world at that time. So they didn't
Hmm.
really let us to go out and play with the neighborhood kids and stuff like that all
Right.
the time. We stayed home or went to these events or went to church or went to school and stuff like that. So our dad was very intentional in trying to make sure that we had a well-rounded and at the same time grounded upbringing. So he emphasized education. He emphasized knowing where you come from. He emphasized uh, not um, not really trying to fit, not really sacrificing your integrity for the sake of fitting in, not
Hmm.
sacrificing your work ethic for the sake of fitting in with others and things of that nature. So those were things that my father always like was very intentional about, and and I believe it had an impact because you know we're all doing we're all working well in our field.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, don't you? And I can definitely relate to like what you're saying because, I also lost my dad too, and he was a storyteller. He wrote books, primarily about Africa, African development, and all these kind of like things related to hopefully a better future for Africa and our homeland. So of course, as just like you as it relates to what you do with Mmuta Di Uto and Ikenga Nation, everything with my podcast, the storytelling, connecting people, bringing people to talk about, different things that are, that people are doing in our community to advance, you know, what we're passionate about. So I think it's so beautiful just to have, you know, wonderful fathers who left something behind like this, and for we as their children to be able to pass it on to the next generation. That's super important to me, and I'm sure to you as well. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Of
And
course.
yeah, most definitely. And I know, just to kind of pivot a little bit from, I guess, your professional background into like now what you're doing with storytelling and the creative side of things. You started out in software development in corporate America, which is a space that, obviously typical immigrant, experience. Like, we want our kids to be, all of these like
Doctor.
high paying.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So these are the typical safe or smart paths. So what kind of pushed you to maybe step out of that space a little bit and start building something that is deeply cultural and creative? And, what was there a moment in time that you kind of realized, okay, that you're called to do something a little bit different?
Actually, I think I'm not sure that there was an exact moment in time, but it was definitely I definitely do feel like it's a calling
Mm,
because it's there have been so many times when I've just been like, what exactly am I doing?
yeah, I
But at the
know.
same time, I'm like, I can't not do this. This
Right,
is I was meant to do this.
right.
And it really came. I don't know how to say pinpoint the exact moment that
Hmm.
I um decided to pivot and do um animations for children and things of that nature. But
Okay.
I just feel like I always had that inkling that like, I want to do something related. It was around 2000 and I want to say 17 or so, and
Okay.
I was just like there were these periods of my life where I just felt shifted.
Hmm.
First it was like I really want to focus on Africa because that's how I understood myself first.
Right.
And
Right.
then I was like, no, I want to focus more on Nigeria. Like I had like a YouTube channel where I would just talk about like whatever was on my mind. And I
Hmm.
was like, let me talk a little bit more about Nigeria. And then I was like, oh, and I joined this WhatsApp group of Igbo people and heard them talking about, and I just feel like let me get more specific because
Yeah.
it's just I wouldn't be doing justice anything if I don't get specific and get, specific about things.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, I believe everybody has the right to do that. Everybody should get specific. And because it's how you bring out the richness of a thing is by
Mm.
going deep with it. And so I started focusing on Igbo culture, and then from there I linked up, like once I started focusing on Igbo culture and started trying to do translations of different things, and this is all while I was working in corporate America, and then when I started talking, I ended up linking up with my current business partner and co-founder of Mmuta Di Uto and the Kenga Nation, and you know, I did a video where I asked him, I put a call out to people and I was like, can anybody translate Newton's second law of motion to Igbo language? And
Wow.
my business partner, who's currently my business partner now, this is how I met him. And he translated it. He not only translated it, but he made like 3 videos translating it and was just like, here's what you asked for.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. I was like, I got this. This is somebody that I want to stay in contact with. So he and I have been friends ever since. But in the process of doing that, I remember a particular day where I was talking to him on the phone, and I was like, I believe that you and I meeting was meant to be. I believe it was
Mm.
orchestrated by the ancestors or something, because you know, you and I just have like so much, like where I lack what I lack you have,
Mm.
and and we both have the same kind of vision and everything like that. So from there we started growing, and then like maybe a year or so after that conversation, we bought the puppet Masiago, and from there, you know, a few years later, here we are. We're like how many
Yeah.
cartoons deep, and viral cartoon in the pocket and all
Right.
this kind of stuff. We're very excited about the where it's gone and where it's headed.
Oh yeah, that's that's so beautiful. I love that. I love that. And I guess to kind of stay there with Mazago and the and everything. So I know I think it started out with the puppets, and then I think eventually to like more of like animations. And I know you also have some content where like as you mentioned like kind of like science and other like topics like translating into Igbo. I think that's really impressive because we need that. It's not just like, the typical, alphabet or just like we need to know our language on a very deep level, like even to something like, mathematics or sciences or just, everyday life, beyond just basic conversation. So I think that's really powerful, what you're doing, what you and your team are doing. So I guess as it relates to, with storytelling and, your background in software development, how has that, I guess, that background knowledge in software, how did it influence the way that you build Mmuta Di Uto, like from the way you think about it from like a from systems or scalability, and how you tell stories like to reach your audience, like how do you kind of incorporate all of that?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And honestly, I'm not quite sure like what the I can't really pinpoint how I've incorporated um my software information, like what I know about building software and stuff like that, into Mmuta Di Uto. Um, I think the culture of tech has
Mm-hmm.
influenced the way that I've approached Mmuta Di Uto, like the culture of tech and the way people say, scale, scale, fail fast and all those kind of things, in the
Okay.
process of like trying to build something.
Mm-hmm.
So we we do have meetings, like me and my team, the animator, my business partner, and everything like that. We have our meetings, which is almost modeled after Scrum, because we talk about what we're doing,
Yeah.
um, and then we're always we always, like, it's like iterating and stuff like that. So
Right.
it definitely helped me with like understanding how the planning process goes, because in software development, you first, you'll design something, and before you finally have from the design process, from in agile, like you go from the design process all the way to the the uh the when you have the deployment process. you go through that process pretty quickly. Like
Mm.
it's like, you're it's not it's something where you go through it like almost like a assembly line kind of thing. And so with
Mm.
us creating these cartoons and creating these contents and creating all the things that we're creating, um, we definitely go through that same kind of process. So I guess it informed me a little bit. I never really think too much about like what we're doing that is related to software development. But one thing for sure, we definitely hope to eventually have our own like app or something like that sometime down the line, and that's something
Nice.
that we're always talking about. But we definitely want to be at the right stage in order to launch something like that.
Right. No, that's deeply powerful. I love that. So, I mean, and of course, like even what you described, there's definitely like so many levels of like project management, working with global teams and, different time zones. So you have to like plan things very well. And even
For
the
sure.
communication piece, like there's a lot that goes into it. So it's definitely great work
Yeah.
that you all are doing.
Even incorporating different softwares that we're using to stay in touch
Exactly.
with each
Oh,
other
yeah.
in different time zones, and
Right.
dropping. It's definitely taught me. I think software development definitely taught me patience and definitely taught me
Hmm.
that collaborative nature
Oh,
of
yeah.
like, okay, just because somebody's delivering something for you, you don't have to like, you don't like your expectation for that person isn't like, you shouldn't have to rush them or be like aggressive about getting your product, as long as you know,
Right.
if you that your team member is a high quality, if you trust and you actually bring on people who are high quality,
Hmm.
then they're going to deliver at the end of the day. And it's just, a matter of, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
So it kind of, those types of things are things you also keep in mind as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's really awesome. So let's switch over a little bit into language, legacy, and the power of play. So you and your team, as we just mentioned, you've been creating children's Igbo content, I believe, since 2019. Before it was trendy. I mean, of course, we saw it here and there, but not like on this level, which I'm very thankful. I'm so happy to see that there are a lot more Igbo language content creators. Like, we definitely need that, especially as it relates to like teaching it, to children and even to their families. So, what was the original vision behind Mmuta Di Uto, and I guess how did you know there was a need for this type of content at this time?
It's funny because I feel like a lot of things that seem like they were like, oh, this is a timely thing. This happened because this is a time for it. It's just a matter of, somebody knows that there's a need, and
Hmm.
they create something, and then sometimes people didn't know that they needed it, become like, oh wow, that actually is a great idea. I do need it.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, because when we started creating these animations, there were
Hmm.
people that came to us and told us, oh, I always wanted to do something like this.
Hmm.
And then there were other people who said things like, is this type I never knew this type of thing was possible. So we've
Right.
heard a lot of different types of reactions, to which I'm very surprised all the time to hear, from different people who, like, number one, how could you never think that your own language could possibly be in animation?
Right.
Um, but there are people who actually literally couldn't conceive of it. And
Hmm.
so, how I knew that it was something to do, I just knew that it's something that I wanted to see. And I
Yes,
knew that
exactly.
what I wanted was that for Igbo language to not perish. Because I
Hmm.
heard that, UNESCO, the United Nations, body of for education and research and stuff like that, um, did a study that said that Igbo language would go extinct by the year 2050. And so that was one of the things that kind of inspired me to say, hey, no, that's not that's not, I can't let that happen. So I started
Right.
pursuing, first of all, for myself to like learn Igbo myself, but second of all, to connect with Igbo people back home and figure out, kind of like understand the root of the problem and create things that would prevent Igbo language from perishing. So I
Hmm.
first worked with a group of people in a thing that I called Igbo lectures. So I was paying people in Nigeria who wanted to teach subjects in Igbo. So Igbo, like
Okay.
Igbo math, Igbo science, Igbo different things like that. So, and it was very hard to find somebody when I was doing that project. It was very hard to find people who could speak fluent Igbo without stopping, and
Mm,
them create like something in about like a scientific topic, or a topic that is like mastery of a particular subject matter
exactly.
um that is the skilled labor. So I remember this one particular girl, Wada Uche, who was teaching chemistry in Igbo, and she
Mm,
kept slipping into English when she was explaining the chemistry concepts, and it just like a lot of words that she didn't know in Igbo language. So I was like, I really wish somebody could like do all these things in pure Igbo, because I
yeah.
knew, and basically because also I have a degree in psychology, that like, there's I knew there was something lacking that was causing people not to be able to, and I feel that part of that is, number one, people don't feel like if they learn Igbo language they can get a job.
Mm,
And if this information, because it's like if this information is available in Igbo language, then you can do things. People can innovate with it, and
yeah.
create companies and do things like refining things and doing all kinds of things with Igbo language that will become profitable. And then you can
That's
build an
right.
entire economy around Igbo language. So it started there, and then I continued on and started experimenting with different things with the Igbo language, until finally we landed on Mmuta Di Uto, and since then we've kind of been moving in that direction. And for me, like, it's kind of like, we wanted to do with work with children content,
Hmm.
because we were thinking that children are the future,
Oh,
and
yes.
a lot of the people who are already mature and grown up, will they already are stuck in their ways. A lot of them are already stuck in their ways. But if you can reach children and tell children, hey, Igbo culture is fun, Igbo culture is cool, Igbo culture is has the same potential as every other culture, they will um they will run with it, and they'll continue
Hmm.
to like honor Igbo culture even in their old age.
Yeah.
So that's a reason why we wanted to like focus on children for this, and also for Igbo children in the diaspora who are not surrounded by Igbo culture.
Right.
They may look at this thing, grow up with it, think it's cool, and then later on in their life they may say, "Hey, mommy, why is that leopard wearing a hat like that?" And the parents has opportunity to explain to them, oh yeah, Igbo people wear that hat. That hat is
Hmm.
called Obago, blah 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 blah, and then, go into detail about the things,
Yeah.
the elements of Igbo culture that we intentionally put into the cartoon.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you all were very intentional about everything, and I love that. I think even in the Abichi video, I remember seeing like the Biafran flag in the background, and
Yep.
some other things like that are a nod to our culture and our heritage. So again, kudos to you all. Very intentional, very beautiful work.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
yeah, definitely. And then of course we can't not talk about the viral hit Egu Akukahu, which wasn't just catchy as I mentioned to you earlier, but it's cultural and educational, and like even with like both that song, the Abiche song, Uno Doom, like even with the beats, like all of the sounds, like once you hear it, it makes you even as an adult want to like dance. Like it's just so like captivating and amazing. So how does it feel to know that kids all over the world, not just the kids, but their parents, their other fan members, are learning about their body parts and learning about other aspects of Igbo culture because it's something that you created.
It feels amazing. It feels exciting. It feels sometimes unreal.
Mhm.
Because, when people, there are certain questions that people ask and certain comments that people leave that
Mhm.
just have me like, huh, like, wow, like people actually think like that. Like, like what I said earlier, that, sometimes somebody will actually ask a question like, I saw there are a lot of people who left this comment when Egwakugahu started going viral. That was does Igbo there are Igbo cartoons like Igbo. I didn't know
Mm.
Igbo can have a cartoon, and it reminded me of Chimamanda Adichie's interview on not her talk, her TED talk, when
Yeah.
Chimamanda talked about the danger of a single story, and she said
Mm.
that um, she was talking about how you know people saw mostly you know we saw black people portrayed in a particular light, and then
Right.
came to her and was like, "Oh, oh." I saw Nigerian fathers portrayed in a typical light, a particular light, which was like very negative, and came to her and said,
Hmm.
"So it's such a shame that Nigerian fathers are like that." And Chimamanda Adichie was like, "Oh, what if I saw one movie of a white person being an alcoholic or something like that, and I came to you
Right.
and I said, what? It's so sad. It's such a shame that white people are like that, and that's the danger of a single story. There's so many stories that Igbo people are so complex and diverse that
Hmm.
there's so many stories that could be told. And when you don't see what you can't be what you can't see, and you can't even conceive of what other people can be if you don't see them in that light.
Yeah.
So to hear somebody say, "I didn't know that Igbo um can have a cartoon," makes me very proud, because now that person knows that Igbo can have a cartoon, and
Exactly.
they might be inspired to make their own thing with using Igbo language,
That's
because
true.
they saw not only that the cartoon that we made was possible, but also that it was successful. And so
That's right.
it drives me to even want to make this even more successful and even bigger and have more of a bigger impact, so that I can continue to inspire people to innovate with the Igbo language, and to make give Igbo its place, put Igbo on the map, and give
Right.
Igbo its place in this world
I
and
love
in the
that.
future.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, most definitely, Udochi. And I know, with you working with people back home, how have you ever had a situation where they're kind of like either excited or confused, like kind of wondering, like, why do you have, like, why are you so passionate about working with the Igbo language? Like, why is it important to you? Because I feel like sometimes I've when I interact with people back home, they always feel that those of us in the diaspora are like they're always like, oh, why do you care to learn it, or why do you feel like, I don't know, it's weird because it's either they feel that we're too American because we don't, we don't, we're not growing up back home, or they feel that when we have like a passion for things back home, they're like, oh, why do you care so much? So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to,
No, no, I agree with you.
yeah.
I've definitely gotten that from people back home. People
Hmm.
back home will say, there's people who back home who even say, "What's in language help?"
I know, right?
Basically saying, what is language gonna help me? Like, if I throw away my language, who cares? Like,
Oh
it's
gosh,
it's not
sad.
helping me at all, so I'm not gonna do anything with it. I've had people
Yeah.
say stuff like that, and I've had people say all kinds of things that um but like, that's what I love about my team, because they just get it. And
Mm.
the person that I met, my business partner, and my the co-founder of Mmuta Di Uto, he actually studied Chinese when
Mm.
he was in Nigeria, because there were Chinese people came to Nigeria, and they were, I guess, trying to teach some Nigerians, Igbo people, or some people in Nigeria, to speak Chinese.
Yeah.
And so he took some Chinese classes. I guess that if they learned Chinese, they would be given teaching jobs or something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So this is why some people were going to learn Chinese. So you'll find actually quite a few Nigerians who speak Chinese now. But he understood. He got it immediately, because of that exposure to Chinese and the Chinese language in
Mm.
Nigeria. He'd never left Nigeria before, and these people came to his country and started teaching Chinese. And he knew what the power of language was. He understood what the power of cultural propagation was. He
Mm.
understood what those Chinese people were doing by coming to Nigeria and teaching Nigerians Chinese. And he he wanted to be a part of Mutadi. He wanted to be a part of making a difference. And so that's why he could
Right.
began collaborate. That's one of the reasons why he decided to collaborate with me. And so we've been working together for over, we've known each other for almost like 10 years now, and we're working together for most of that time. And so it's been a really powerful process, to know that, like, we're doing something to impact, the preservation of our language.
I love it. I love it. And I think there's nothing more important than that, I feel like. Um, so why is it important to you, that our children, the next generation, especially those, of course, being raised outside of Nigeria, grow up being bilingual in Igbo language, and what's at stake if we lose the language?
Yes, good question. So one thing that I think that the biggest benefit I think that there will be to having bilingual children who speak both Igbo and English, and also have the perspective of the Western world,
Hmm.
um, is the ability to innovate using the Igbo language. Like, if you have the Igbo, if you can speak, if you understand the Igbo language, and you have that cultural pride of Igbo culture, and you
Mm-hmm.
understand the people in Igbo land also, because you understand them from a particular vantage point, then you can do things like what I'm doing, and create using Igbo innovation. One of those things that you can do is, for example, a person can take it upon themselves to say, "Oh, I'm going to translate this science textbook into Igbo. I can translate this chemistry textbook into Igbo language, so that people who speak fluent Igbo can innovate with the principles of chemistry. I'm going to translate this, because you mentioned before that we have a math and science channel with Mmuta Di Uto as well, which we're working on, but it's very challenging to work on, because these concepts are not specifically translated into Igbo language. So a lot of people don't do math and science in Igbo; they go to English to do those things.
Right.
So um, so if we were able to do programming, math, science, chemistry, physics, biology, all these things in the Igbo language, and go deep, genetics, things of that nature,
Mm.
um, quantum physics, imagine in Igbo language,
Wow.
um, imagine the conversations that would have, imagine the innovations you would see, imagine the development that would occur, imagine the innovation that would happen in Igbo land itself, amongst Igbo speaking people, if we
Right.
had this information available to us, and we could speak about it fluently and conversantly in the Igbo language. That would be, for me, the greatest thing that we could potentially achieve by getting people to embrace the Igbo language and culture, who and become bilingual.
Right.
Um, I think that was the end. Did you have, it felt like there was two parts to your question. Oh, and what was it?
Oh
What
yeah.
is at stake if we lose the language? And
Mm-hmm.
what is at stake is, I believe, you know, erasure, essentially. Like, if we're not able to achieve this, then I believe that people will not find value in the Igbo language. Right now you're seeing other people's, like, Chinese culture and
Yeah.
Western culture and Japanese culture. They take their language, and even Russian culture, they take their language, they translate things into their language, they make those things available for their people, and they get their people to innovate in those languages. So they have a very vested interest in preserving and propagating their culture. At the end of the day, if they are able to take things in their language and translate them, and innovate with their language, um, they feel pride in their identity,
Mm-hmm.
and they continue to build on what they leave legacies of that identity. But if
Right.
we don't do these things, then our entire the Igbo culture, everything that we've known, our ancestors, everything that they've built on, will be erased, because people will be they'll be like, well, I can't feed myself with the Igbo language. I can't, create. I can't teach my children with the Igbo language. I can't,
Mm.
um, you know, I can't get the things that I want, the things that entertain me, the things that feed me, the things that protect me with the Igbo language. So I'm going to divest and go to another culture to get those same things. And when you
Hmm.
divest and go to another culture, eventually what you get is erasure. You
Yeah.
won't be, you'll literally be indistinguishable from any other black culture, any other, like, a, no one will be able to, you won't know your roots anymore.
Yeah.
And other people will pretty much be, I don't like to use a strong language about talking about it, but it's facts. Other people will be masters over you because you
Right.
literally won't really be able to hold claim to say that this is the reason why. If somebody wants to make fun of you and say, hey, but you never came up with anything, they could easily say that.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what is at stake, in my opinion.
No, Doche, I mean, I think you definitely covered a lot of great things. And I think one thing that stood out to me the most as it relates to all that you've said is that kind of innovation and just kind of being creative in ways that you think about how you use the language. Because, like you rightly said, many people, as we see online, that sentiment of, um, e.g., Igbo, Megan, like, what do you use the language to do, or how is it going to help you? And for one, it's a very sad way of thinking because and defeated way of thinking because you're making your language and your culture and your heritage almost as if it's nothing. I mean, that's what makes you you. That's your history and everything else like that. You should be proud of that. But in addition to that, there's so much that you can do. Clearly, there's a need. There's a market for it. We in the diaspora um, desire, to have the language, for ourselves, for our children. So, like you rightly said, there's so many avenues, for potential, income to be made for people who, either studied Igbo as a subject, in school, or for those who just have a very good mastery of it in general, and teaching online. Creating content. I mean, there's like there's so many things they can do. Translation, like there's a lot that can be done. It's just about maybe positioning yourself, marketing yourself, and again taking advantage of the fact that we have social media and the internet and all these things. This is a wonderful time to be alive when it comes to some of these things. So thank you for that point that you brought up. Um, and I know that you kind of mentioned it earlier, so I won't like get into it too much about as far as like working on, the global team. But can you kind of walk us through like the creative process? Like, how does that look like with, how you all maybe come up with stories or like the writing process and even the animations? Like, how does that all work? Because that's definitely like I'm pretty sure it's a very busy and a lot of things go on, in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to keep it simple for you, but like, essentially, well, we have different people on our team that are
Right.
especially good in certain things, right? I told you earlier that, like, if you find a person who is qualified, highly
Hmm.
qualified, you have to trust that person. That
Right.
it's not a matter of if they'll do it, but when. So that's been part of our part of the entire bedrock of what we're doing.
Mm,
Having extremely qualified people. We found an extremely qualified animator who is very passionate about what we're doing, and
nice.
so we trust him, and he delivers. We have an extremely qualified musician who is just really great at what he does and knows how to collaborate with other musicians and other producers. And that person, you know when you find somebody that like that, you hold on to them. And so essentially what we do is we have meetings, sometimes roughly once a month.
Okay.
um and then we'll talk about, like, what we plan to do for the next we'll talk maybe 2 or 3 months in advance about what we're going to be working on. And um yeah, we'll talk about the next cartoon and things like that. I'll pass on information about, we'll kind of brainstorm about, like, together on the call, um like what that animation is going to look like. The animator will bring forth, like, after a couple of weeks or so, the animator will show us storyboard
Okay.
of the animation that they've done. Then what we used to do with the puppets was I would write a script, I would send it to my partner to translate, and
Mm-hmm.
then he would translate it, then record the audio and stuff like that. But now that we're doing animation, the animator will send us a storyboard. Um, then we'll look at that, we'll approve it. We may tell him change this, change that.
Right.
At that stage, then we'll go back, and then he'll send us. He'll come back with a animatic, and the animatic is just black and white images of the animation, completely animated, but it's just all black and white, no color, and it's not very detailed and stuff like that. He'll send that to us with the music overlaid, and then we'll approve or tell him to change things or whatever the case may be. Once we get that stage out, we just pretty much trust him with the rest of the process, because at that stage we've probably figured out all the things that we want to change by
Right.
then. So it should be, unless it's like something very detailed, that it's like, okay, we want to put this cultural symbol in there, can you make sure to include that, or whatever the case may be. But other than that, like by the time it's in color, we're pretty much ready to go.
Right.
So it's pretty done by then. But it really helps when you're working with such a talented team.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, Udochi, we're gonna kind of begin to wrap a little bit. So, when you think about your younger self, when you were sent home at 13, what do you think that that young girl would say? To see, what you were able to build, up till now. And-
The 13-year-old me would probably say, "Wow, I grew up to be a cool person." Like a pretty cool person.
Right.
I don't know. Like I think at 13 years old, um, at 13 years old, I was mouthy, and I thought I was exceptional. Um, so I didn't really know what I would become at that age,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
I definitely thought I was exceptional and thought I would do something
Yeah.
um exceptional with my life. But I didn't know where, because I wrote poetry and I did, you know,
Yeah.
I read a lot of books and stuff like that when I was even
Yeah.
at that age.
Yeah.
So I thought like, oh, I'm gonna, be something. But life didn't exactly pan out that way. But I think that person that I was would be proud that I'm following my vision. I'm following my
Yes.
calling. That I found purpose in my life. So that's what I think the 13-year-old me would
Oh,
probably see.
that's so sweet. What's one thing that you hope that every family who, watches and engages with Mmuta Di Uto, like what do you hope that they walk away with, wherever they are in the world?
Well, this is another good question. I think that what I would love for any family to walk away with is just pride in their identity,
Hmm.
and like just joy and belief. Even if you're not Igbo, even if your identity is like, you know, something in Kenya or something like that, or
Yeah.
like South Africa, wherever you are, even if you're from Saudi Arabia, I would love for you to look at this cartoon and say to yourself, wow, like culture is very important, and
Yep.
my identity is very important, and I can do something even with my culture, because
Yes.
whether or not you're marginalized or whatever the case may be, I can take whatever it is and make something of it,
That's
um
true.
according to, like in whatever way that I know how. And so that's kind of what I hope people take it away from it.
That's deep. That's deep. Thank you, Dochi. Now, I'll put the floor, in your hands. Can you tell us how we can connect with you and how, what's next? How can people, get connected?
Of course. Yeah. So we are at youtube.com/Maziago, at Maziago. That's our YouTube channel. So we have lots of cartoons, just like the one you see on the screen over there. Um, Maziago, we have these cartoons for Igbo children and stuff like that. So if you like the things that I've been saying about like what Igbo cartoons are, um, definitely check them out at youtube.com/Maziago. We also have a Patreon now. We recently launched a Patreon where we're trying to bring parents and parents together who are interested in learning about how they can take care, like improve their um, their like raise their children to be Igbo speaking and things of that nature,
Right.
or people who are just want to know what's behind the scenes going on at Mmuta Di Uto. We're trying to bring
Mm.
those people together to join our Patreon to so definitely check that out at patreon.com/Mmuta Di Uto. And then check out our books on Amazon. Um, we've got coloring books, we've got activity books, we've got story books. Just search Mmuta Di Uto on Amazon and you'll see all of our products. Those are great ways to support what we're doing because it's one of those things where we really can't keep going without the support of people that say they support us. So we definitely would love to have you guys join our community um, and become part of making content that enriches culture all over the world.
Oh yes. Oh yes, most definitely. Thank you so much, Udochi. I mean, this time has been, wonderful, and I'm, just so happy that we've been able to connect. So, once again, this has been a conversation from the diaspora. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on your favorite listening platform and share with others. Don't forget to follow us at Building Africa's Future and subscribe to our YouTube channel just to keep up to date with us. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and let's keep building Africa's future wherever you are. Thank you once again. Bye.